Hello, family. We just need to get into this episode as quickly as possible because we are going to be covering Iran and America's current, what do they call it, Corey? A preemptive strike. A preemptive strike where they assassinated a world leader. So, A, that actually doesn't happen that much anymore. This is significant. And B, how much of this is Israel and how much is actually America? But before we get into that, we're going to be covering a final word on BAFTA, the final word on BAFTA, in the form of a comedian at the NAACP Awards. And we're going to enter the conversation of Iran from just a little tidbit from a Gavin Newsom. Now, in the next episode, we are going to be covering the results of the primaries we're currently in. 2026 midterms, they're starting. So the voting deadlines for Texas, North Carolina, and Arkansas are coming in as we speak. Let's find out where they land, and then we can talk about America in a broader context, because what's more fun than talking about America in a broader context? Anything else? No, I'm joking. We actually have so much possibility in front of us, and that's the thing that I feel the most about this moment, but also an incredible amount of responsibility, because the things that we'll be covering today, some of them truly are heinous, and this is what happens when we don't have power. So the comedian you're about to hear is named Deon. I like him. He's pretty funny, and you're about to find out why. Interestingly enough, a lot of leftists, a lot of activists, just a lot of people in general had a lot to say about what happened at the NAACP Awards. I don't think they ever cared about the NAACP Awards as far as I'm concerned. I've never heard any of these people mention it before, and I happen to lurk online quite a bit. So why don't we listen to Deon at the NAACP Awards, where they sort of capture several moments that have happened for the Black community in the entertainment industry, including the Tourette's incident at BAFTA. Yeah. Okay. So I thought that was great. Every Black person I know thought that was great. What's interesting, okay, so instead of pulling the most annoying people, I thought, because it surprised me to realize that one of my, favorite comedians, John Marco, had something to say about this that wasn't in alignment. It's actually the only time he's missed. And I thought, this is a great place to start, because if even somebody who is usually right all the time doesn't get it, right? We have a long way to go. So I just want to read to you the tweet that John Marco made in response to this. He said, "It would be insane to not have some kind of joke about what happened, but jokes about disabled people are so often just plain hacky. Variations on, that's weird, that's annoying, or in this case, cut it out or else. It's not as cruel as it is lazy writing." I couldn't disagree more. It's so interesting, the framing here, right? It's that, I want to just say that the jokes on disabled community, that's weird, that's annoying, or in this case, it's cut it out or else. Is that what you got out of it when y'all heard that? You know what I interpret it as? And I'm doing this, I'm interpreting it as a comedian. I'm interpreting this as a whole nignog, and I'm interpreting this just as kind of a normal person. It's really odd to me, right? And as someone who's a fan of John Marco, it is so odd to me to approach it this way, because what we saw again and again was the minimization of racism, racial impact. And this is why it was such a perfect Boondocks episode. In fact, after all the coverage that we did, both myself and then in the episode with Corey and I, and the fact that we're talking about it now, I got angry afterwards, right? Like, not bad angry, but frustrated that I spent that much time talking about it. And I thought, why am I so annoyed at this much time being spent? And I realized something, y'all, because the thing that I wished I had spent more time talking about, if we were going to, was how funny the situation was. In a moment where nobody is talking about race, but on some level, we're all holding on to it. Like, there's this unspoken tension, what they call the elephant in the room, right? It's partly why every time Black Americans bring up anything to do with racism, the immediate response is, oh, here they go again, because there's this tension that sits, which is why we need to be approaching it differently, which is where our next body of work is coming from. But I'll save that for a bit later, because guess what? Your boy got to writing. But anywho, right? In this moment, like, this is aired on BET. It's at the NAACP Awards. So it's everything that has to do with the Black experience. Nobody's tuning into that really except for us. Where is the appropriate place to let loose, to laugh at it, to say, hey, whew, that fucking sucked, right? Because here's the thing. Was I offended by a man with Tourette's shouting the word nigger? No. But you want to know why? Because I've had a fascinating life. I mean, I literally remember being at Standing Rock and having an indigenous man, literally a native man, call me a nigger. And I didn't even take it personally. Not because he's, native, like ostensibly, right? But because he's native literally, as in pot kettle, my nigga, we in the same place. So I've had different experiences, but we talked about the fact that for most Black people, in fact, I'd argue every Black person, and probably anybody who experiences racism regularly, right? But there's a particular pointedness around Black American racism. You don't get to consent on when something racist is thrown at you. It happens everywhere all the time. There's a term for that. It's called hypervigilance. You might have heard that before, right? And so intent is irrelevant in that moment. I mean, I think those two guys are fine. That's not the point. It was the reaction. It was the backlash. And the question is, where is it appropriate? When can a joke be made? Like, it captures a feeling, right? A feeling is not a fact. To treat it like that is to actually not understand comedy. The sensation of the feeling, what it does to you when someone calls you a nigger, you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna beat that ass. And then you find out you can't beat that ass because that nigga is disabled. So you have to have a sense of humor, which, I mean, who demonstrates that better? So to even hear somebody who I think gets it right most of the time, completely miss the mark here. It's being protective of somebody who's actually fine. This whole thing, the whole way we respond to this is such garbage, honestly. It should have been funnier than it was. Anyway, if not, at the NAACP Awards, aired exclusively on BET, right? Where films that typically get disrespected or actors that typically get disrespected or snubbed at awards where they're not welcome actually get to be celebrated. We get to have spaces where we say, that was some bullshit. And the issue isn't somebody with Tourette's is bullshit. It was bullshit that things rolled out that way. It was bullshit that we didn't get our get back. It was bullshit, whatever it is, because the indictment is on society. The indictment was on the BBC and BAFTA. I don't know. I just think it was such a mess because it once again demonstrated the complete lack of compassion. Imagine being called a nigger and then somebody saying, well, the response was cut it out or else. It doesn't matter if it's involuntary or not, because what Black folks are doing in that moment is making sure it doesn't get carried on. You're letting go of the tension. And that's a really wonderful thing. It actually creates more solidarity with Black and disabled communities. And do I need to belabor the fact again? Who's historically fought for disability rights beyond disabled people? Black folks, literally only, with any measure of success in America. So yeah, I was a bit disappointed in that, but ultimately, clarity, hindsight, 100%, whatever, right? But the final words are, for me, is just like, this is exactly where it ought to happen and exactly in the right way. And if you don't get that, then yeah, your comedy, the buck stops for you at actually understanding how racism affects people in America. That being said, what a great way to bring in Gavin Newsom. What a great time. So Newsom said some stuff last week that I didn't get into. And I've been saving this, and it's going to be our segue into Iran. Weirdly enough, yes, my boys, talking the identity politics. Corey, why don't we pull that up? Please.
No doubt that the Democratic Party needs to be, dare I say, more culturally normal. I believe that. Less prone to spending disproportionate amount of time on pronouns, identity, politics. more focused on tabletop issues, things that really matter, the stacking of stress in terms of electricity bills and child care costs and health care and obviously housing costs, and how easily we get trapped in that, how I've fallen prey to that. I mean, here I was, way out front on marriage equality. So I understand this from both on the receiving end of this and on the...
All right. All right, Newsom. And, you know, he's taking a pretty hardline stance against, you know, America starting another war. That is a good thing, right? But I wanted to speak to this because, of course, once again, I saw the so-called left, which, to be clear, is the left that's like, you must withhold your vote, and that's the way to win. That's the only way the Democrats are going to care. Their job is not to care. They are part of the status quo. We are the opposition. And that's how I'm coming into this, because what I saw over and over again were the same folks that were just, you know, there's a subset, right? And I'm not angry at that subset. Criticism has a place, but typically, right, the talkers and the doers, there's less distance between, and there's a hell of a lot more doing, right? But lately, there's a lot less doing because we have fewer doers, and then the way that we're getting information being disseminated, well, we're not getting it, right? And we know why. We know why. We know who owns our media platforms. We know how much disinformation is spreading. So to see this subset of folks, right, and even if they aren't, it was more than a few saying, and this is the opposition, as in Newsom, this is the opposition against Donald Trump. I think we're really confused. But let me just start with Newsom, because I want to make one thing clear. He's right about the pronoun stuff, right? But shut the fuck up. That's not for you to say. That's our shit to say. You guys are like fair weather friends, right? You're fair weather friends. You're going to say that pronouns are important when you're talking to women, or if you're on some girl podcast, which you do not clear. Like you could, like my man clearly is not in a rush. He is in no rush to be talking to the birds, okay? So you're going to switch because these folks are chameleons, which I get, but like, keep the pronoun part out of your mouth because you don't care that much about it. But the thing that annoyed me too was this framing of the Democrats as the opposition. They're not. They're part of the status quo, right? We are the opposition, and everything that is happening right now is a measure of our failure to build power. And that's okay. Every single thing is designed so that we can't, so that we don't, so that we won't. I'm concerned that it's working a little bit too well. We have so much to contribute, but the point is to shore up enough power so that the Democrats, if they are in fact who is in power at the time, of course we can run a bunch of people. You know what I would love to see? I would love to see us, you know, getting more reps, and I would love to see us choosing cities for strongholds and building it up. And, you know, there are people that are doing that wonderfully already. You can check out the Working Families part of you. I mean, great work was happening in Ferguson. And that's how we got Cori Bush. But then AIPAC ran Cori Bush out. And who said anything about that? Right. And that's the problem, is the second that anybody good gets into, you know, because you can only win as a Democrat in the current context, particularly in major cities, places, states. That's very consequential. You need a robust plan to run an independent candidate. But more importantly, are you thinking about the fact that we have no caps on political spending? No caps whatsoever? Are we thinking about the fact that there's an electoral college that's got the system so rigged that we're behind on a 3 to 4 point spread? There's no theory of change, right? We've talked about that. So I'm not going to waste time yapping about that point. It's that we're the opposition. It gives us agency, which feels good, but it also gives us responsibility, which I find that a lot of people don't want. You want to sit back and talk about how bad things are. You want to condemn, but you don't want to do. And that's the part that's confusing me, right? And again, Democrats use identity when it serves them. They use it, you know, when it's advantageous, but then they want to act brand new when they're sitting across from Ben Shapiro's little weird ass, right? If you're sitting in front of a goblin, a little gremlin, you're going to change your tune, right? So I really want to make sure we understand that we're the opposition. And this is the final point I'm going to make on that, okay? Because I'm going to put this in context. I love going back to a point that we've already made and approaching it from a different perspective. So I want to be clear. No one, not a single person that did not vote for Kamala Harris impacted her loss, right? They would not have won. Let me be clear. Kamala Harris would not have won if every single person that withheld their vote actually voted. They were very vocal about it, so it was easy to track. This is a data point. You can look it up, right? Few million at most. That should also be an indictment on your strategy for those who are like, if we withhold the vote, it'll make you don't have the power. You literally made no difference. You were a fucking seagull farting in the wind. There was no measurable impact. And by the way, it wasn't a few million. It was less than that. And the answer isn't, well, getting more people to withhold the vote. The truth is, if you're just looking at things objectively, more people are going to be inclined to participate because shit has gotten so bad so quickly. And we'll talk about just exactly how and why. Because every single promise that Trump made, not only has he lied about it, right? But he's actually actively taking money out of people's pockets and starting another regime change war. Because he's a cunt and the country is run by a bunch of cunts because we're still making concessions to racists. Please, if you haven't listened to the race versus class episode, go ahead, right? Because race first has been the only times where we've had significant wins. But because of racial resentment, and when I say racial resentment, I want to be very specific, because of how much everyone in this country generationally, historically hates Black Americans, America has not seen significant real change or wins unless Black people were involved in it and leading it, to be quite frank. That has been true of every generation. It is partly why everybody sucks right now. It's because there aren't Black leaders currently occupying that space. It's a little bit too early for that. But also because of the racist backlash that happened with BLM. Do you know who folded? Everybody. Everybody. Let me be clear. Everybody who yaps. The real folks who supported BLM, I'll include myself in this, we got humiliated. We did not have good leadership. Our leadership failed. It happens sometimes, right? And we haven't figured out how to come back from that. I promise you things are in motion. There's a plan. But do you see how easy it is to fold? They use the same lie that they use over and over and over again, right? The whole black activist grifter, which has roots all the way down to Garvey and Baby Hoover. Before there was a CIA, before there was an FBI, when he saw that the UNIA was doing so well, this was before the NAACP. No one gave a shit about the NAACP because it was a bunch of establishment, high yellow light skins that had all gone to Harvard, even as Harvard was like, no, we changed our mind. We changed our mind. No more Blacks. Whoops, we made a mistake, right? Different entities, different schools have done that over different periods of time. But it should really speak to, because if I ever sit down across from these folks, and eventually I'm going to be sitting down across from many, many people, just scared myself. But the truth is, your strategy sucks. There is no withholding your vote to impact change, because you did that and it failed. And any responsible leader, any responsible left would look at that failure and study it and say, okay, we need to approach this differently. But the whole premise, their whole theory of change is we're going to make the Democrats care. We're going to make the Democrats care by showing. Isn't that what you did with your dad when you were like fucking 7? Or your mom when you were just like, oh, okay, you're going to, or your friend, your best friend, if you ignore me, I'm going to ignore you. But more than that, it's the type of leadership that we're choosing right now, okay? It's what the right does. And there's a place for all of us, but we just got to get better aligned. That's all. That's all. There has to be a little bit more respect, I think, for knowledge over information, and also for maybe not being so completely self-involved all the time, as in I now have an emotional relationship to being right. I have an emotional relationship to believing this is right. Do you want to know where I've experienced that the most? And again, I don't have a normal experience. I've gone to dozens and dozens and dozens of college campuses. I've been to hundreds of conferences. I've presented dozens of lectures around the globe and have participated in, at this point, hundreds of protests. And this is just to give scale to people I've met, right? So when I say that it's the right that chooses inexperience over and over again, I'm being literal. Let me be clear, okay? Because the point now is our current most prominent yappers have zero experience and a lot of hubris around their zero experience. They also don't care about race at all, which we need to if we're going to win. That's okay. It's about information sharing. I believe in that. I'm going to keep that going. But I want to be clear, right? At best, these folks have attended protests. Let me get this right. I go, like, this would be the equivalent of somebody going to an NBA game, right? Watching the game live. And then coming back, getting online and presenting themselves as an NBA coach, and you all are pretending that they are. It's a bit weird. You know who does that? The right. Kash Patel is a perfect example of that. That guy was a friggin' rec league hockey coach, and he was part-time. And now he runs the FBI. And we can't even find that good lady's mother. Because they don't care. The point was never to run the government. The point was to pillage it and make it irrevocably altered and changed. Every social net is being destroyed. We have no antitrust laws. And now, here we go, they're going to control CNN in this new merger because Netflix folded, couldn't handle the heat. We'll get into that in a second. This is now a perfect segue into what's happening with Iran, because I want to be clear. As I name these things, I want us to see what happens when we don't take responsibility, when we aren't in power, right? We saw already the expansion of ICE, the expansion of detention centers. We say, fuck ICE, but don't you want to do something about it now? Like something really meaningful? Don't you want to stop a new detention center from opening? Don't you want to try to get people out of it? I'm glad that you can sit down and have but don't we want to actually be powerful? I'm starting to question whether or not we do, but I do know that the helpers are out there and we outnumber every other population. Sometimes we just don't know what to do or how to do it. Every person that I've met has this thing inside of them that hasn't been activated before. We come to protests and we go to these workshops back when workshops used to happen because we're looking for something. And the truth is you can't find it alone. You already know how I feel about this. The best parts of ourselves, well, they're unlocked by other people. But because we live in such a me context, right? I'm the only person that matters. My needs are paramount. I want you to start thinking about how that's actually influencing leftist communities and morale and agenda and efficacy, okay? So, seems like a good way to get into it because when I mention the fact, right? Sorry, I had to grab some water. That 165 schoolgoers, I'm sorry, I got a little bit emotional. 165 girls were murdered in a bomb, co-signed and funded by Israel and America. For what? For what? And why aren't the people who still condemn everybody for trying to do meaningful work? It doesn't matter if it's the best work. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in the good work or the bad work, right? But the people who didn't vote, who are very loud about it, they take a lot of pride in that, are still condemning the people who did. Where are those voices now, right? Because you were marching for Palestinian children. And by the way, mass mobilization is not effective anymore. It's wonderfully spiritually corrective, but it's not attached to anything. If you were trained, you would know that mass mobilization is your last result. Always your last choice. It's called escalation tactics, right? So where you start and where you end are different. The point is to say, well, we did this, this, and this, and you're getting information so that when you do mobilize, right, it's very pointed and direct and effective, which is why so many Black Americans have seen success, even as historically and today, people in this country hate them and hate them in a way that I can barely comprehend myself. It's really confusing to me. Because the depth of it, I mean, don't get me wrong, anti-Black racism is everywhere, but I didn't experience it like this. And I don't experience it like this. It's awful. Because it is constantly be reminded that nobody cares except you. And you know what? That's a feeling that we ought to tap into because who doesn't feel that way? But can you feel that way for other people? It is Every psychologist, every body of work tells us again and again how unhealthy it is to be this preoccupied with yourself. I don't fucking want to hear about your ADHD anymore. I don't give a fuck. 165 schoolgirls died because we don't have power, not because Donald Trump is a monster, right? That's too simple a story, but because we let a monster win. That's why. That's why it matters, because it doesn't just impact us here. It impacts people everywhere. That's what it means to be in the heart of capitalism. Maybe we ought to take a moment and think about just how differently things could look and work and feel if we had even a little bit more power. This is not instant. We're talking about decades. But my God, most of us are going to be around for that long. We're still going to be there at the end. So why not give it a go? Why not? Fuck. Let me tell you what happened, okay? So over the weekend, right, on Saturday, I mean, Iran's leader was literally assassinated. I think the last time that happened was in the 70s. We don't do it that way. So let me give you the details, okay? So on February 28th, America and Israel conspired and executed an Israeli bombing that killed Iran's supreme leader, right? We all talk about, we all say Khamenei, but it's, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. This isn't simply like the demise of one of, the world's central global figures and leaders, right? In the last half century, which is significant in of itself. It's unprecedented in modern warfare. It's the successful killing of an enemy head of state by a foreign military. Speaking of which, I mean, if you're doing it, we say all the time online, we're just like, if anybody, but the truth is, we don't have to live through the hell and chaos and brutality and abuse that we willfully send around the rest of the world. And here's the facts, right? I want to remind you again why that happens. It's not for American safety at all. It has nothing to do with American safety. It's literally to protect the assets of the already rich in America after they sold you out for globalization because they sent manufacturing everywhere else. So you lost futures. Americans lost futures. Americans lost money. Americans had, right, financial stability stolen from them so that a few assholes could get richer by underselling everybody else in the world, and then you pay for the military to protect their assets overseas. And my God, do you pay for the fucking military? Me too at this point. Right? And so that's why you don't have more schools. That's why you don't have infrastructure. That's why the roads are shit. That's why nobody can read. And guess what? That was happening decades ago, and it's happening right now still. But they're just more grotesquely wealthy than they've ever been before. Always know that there's a financial motive for everything that this government does, because they have no interest in governing. They simply could not keep making as much money as they want to without owning the government, because after a certain point, when you're in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions, there's no sale. There's no single sale that's going to keep that ever-expanding, greedy, rapacious mouth full. You have to own the printing presses. You have to cut Medicaid, right? You have to get defense contracts and space contracts. Oh, fuck off with that shit. You know how we are hundreds of years away at minimum of any kind of interplanetary travel. Why are people believing this, right? It's why every billionaire came out of the shadows. That was one of the biggest moments of where we were headed, okay? So let me just give you some numbers for the devastation that's been wrought. Jesus Christ. So in Iran, as of right now, 787 people have been killed. 165 schoolgirls and staff were killed in a missile strike on a primary school in Manab, in the country's south, right? This is on the war's very first day. So of that 165, I know at minimum, this is an important point, let me clarify that fact, 165 people were killed in the school. At minimum, I believe it was 85 schoolgirls specifically. Jesus Christ. And this is according to a humanitarian group, Iranian Red Crescent Society. To be clear, from here on in, everything that I'm speaking to has been sourced by this, Washington Post. Who did I source? Let me just, because I think it's so important to say these things, and I usually, say them all the time. But of late, I've been taking it a bit for granted. Let me just pull it up. So Reuters, Washington Post, and the BBC. By the way, Reuters and the BBC hit me with a paywall today. We are lost. This is like... The death of journalism is most apparent in these moments where we need to know what is happening, and we need to know what is happening that they're not telling us. That too was on purpose. There is a very open, naked strategy in front of us, while some of the most prominent among us are telling you that it's the Democrats and what the Democrats are doing, not what we need to do, not how we build power, not what people are interested in running here, and not... There's no education that's happening. Where are the workshops? Where's our political infrastructure? But, that comes later on. Let me just get back to the point. Because I can talk about that all day. But part of what I'm doing, part of what we're doing is building that model out. And, of course, we're not going to do that alone, but we can start it, right? And guess what? Y'all are involved in this. You are helping me with this because I'm going to have a lot of questions for you soon. But first, I got to put those pieces out. Anyway, let's go back to it, right? Let's go back to what happened. So why did the U.S. and Israel attack Iran? They said there was a preemptive strike. Now, we have already debunked the idea that there's some nuclear threat in Iran. It doesn't currently exist in any meaningful way. This is something that every world leader agrees upon, except for Israel, and depending on who's president, America, right? But that's always been the constant need to sort of dangle a threat in front of us is to keep you cowed. How many times do we have to hear, the best way to shore up support for an American president is to just start a war. Just start a war, you'll be fine. And my God, they have no problem doing that. So, this is what is pretty fucking heinous. They didn't know what they were doing. So I can't believe I'm saying this. There's two things that I'm going to say that I ought not to have to say, but I'm going to. Commanders, and this is from the Washington Post, because soldiers are reporting this because they know how deranged this is. There are commanders, literal people whose job it is to send other people into lines of fire, that are telling their soldiers, U.S. commanders and lieutenants are telling their soldiers, Trump has been anointed by Jesus, and this is a holy war. First of all, Jesus had better taste, significantly. And second of all, that's terrifying. The implications of that are scary, but that's what happens when we let theocratic fascists in. They're not interested in racism. They're not interested in theocracy. They chose people who were so that they can get richer while we're all dealing with the fallout of their choices and bankrolling the protection of those choices, right? So that's number one. And number two, because we are run by the most inept, corrupt people in the fucking world, right? Or certainly in America. Because I know we got some weirdos out there, right? The other thing is they thought it was going to last 48 hours. They thought, okay, we're going to kill the supreme leader of Iran and then everything's going to be good. I'm going to tell them to put down their arms and it's going to be fine. This is fucking Iran we're talking about. And where's Saudi in all of this? Well, I think they were a little bit cowed because they've made so many business deals with the Trump administration that they've essentially just sold us out. I mean, do we understand the influence that Saudi is going to have on this paramount merger? Look, it could fall out. There's like 8 months to a year of negotiations, and billions of dollars are on the table. But there is a specific reason that Trump and their ilk wanted this deal to go this way. Netflix had to fold. Larry Ellison will do anything that Donald Trump says. Fucking anything. He's a avowed Zionist, right? And they made clear, if this merger goes through, we demand CNN. Well, guess who's going to be overseeing that? That fucking skin tag little turd, Barry Weiss, who is so fucking untalented. And it doesn't matter that we're talented or smarter if we don't have power, if we can't do anything with it. Because again, it's not about the beliefs. It's not about our beliefs. It's about the results of our beliefs, right? But again, the Washington Post has reported the fact that they did not, in a completely unique article, and the fact that any kind of journalism is getting out from that paper is fantastic and wild to me. We're not going to be getting this soon. And that's scary. We can't substack our way out of this shit. So the other thing is they genuinely didn't think Iran would retaliate. That's not an exaggeration. That is an actual quote. Donald Trump thought that this thing would be over in 45 minutes. He thought he could make a call. And in the meantime, Americans have been killed. But let me break down the entire death toll as it stands currently. Israel had 10 civilians killed because Iran has retaliated by bombing places like U.S. embassies around the world, right? Primarily that or strongholds. So 10 Israelis that were killed. In Lebanon, 50 people were killed in an Israeli strike. This according to Lebanon's health ministry. Bahrain, one person was killed after fire broke out in their industrial city following missile interception. In Kuwait, there's going to be more around death in Kuwait. But in Kuwait, we know that 3 people were killed, including 2 Kuwaiti soldiers in the Iranian attacks, right? This according to Kuwait's health and foreign ministries. I have actually been getting a lot of my news from non-American sources when it comes to the reporting, and then cross-referencing that with American sources. There's now an additional level of diligence that I have to take just to make sure that what I'm saying is factually correct, because I don't trust American reporting anymore, singularly, which is why I was so pissed off at the BBC today. $8.99. There are a handful of articles that were worth $8.99 on the BBC. But anyway, right, in Oman, 1 person was killed from a projectile hit. In the United Arab Emirates, 3 people were killed, and this is according to UAE's defense ministry. 6 U.S. service members were killed in a strike on a facility in Kuwait. This is according to the U.S. Central Command. For fucking what? For what? Because the hubris of the people in this administration that not only they don't have a single clue what they're doing, they also don't give a shit about what they do. To them, it just comes down to how much money they're going to be able to walk away with. Every single move that they've made is consistent with that. They genuinely just didn't think that Iran would retaliate. And that's the moment that we're in now. We don't know how long this is going to go on for. And here's my favorite part. America does not have the defenses, like our military defenses. We don't actually have the resources to live through a prolonged back and forth with Iran. It takes an unbelievable amount of resourcing to do that, right? And so we're not even in that place. So let me be really clear. I want to be really clear about this. Trump ran on what, right? What did he say he was going to do for Americans, right? He ran on pro-groceries and anti-war, right? How's the cost of groceries doing right now, by the way? We're doing, like, we're good, right? Oh no, we're not. We're not. Okay. Well, how's the anti-war thing going? Oh, also not great. Let me be crystal clear about this. Right? Because I can't believe we have to break this thing down. And by the way, while this is all happening, we are all getting clipped at the wings by AI being forced down our fucking throats while even more hundreds of billions of dollars are directing into manufacturing a need because we don't have one. We don't have a need for AI. We need the basics. But there's always going to be enough asshats saying, no, this is making my life better. No, it's making you dumber. And that was the point. It's making us more self-obsessed. We're wanting to talk to fucking obsequious bots so that we don't feel so alone while everything around us is manufactured for complete isolation and loneliness, right? President Donald Trump, who ran on a pro-grocery, anti-war, anti-immigrant position, has made it so Americans are paying more for groceries because their money's being directed to the expansion of detention centers, while their Medicaid has been cut to fund the tax breaks that they've given to billionaires and the excessively rich, right? That's what's happened. So now Trump has started another expensive, useless war while 100 million Americans collectively owe $200 billion in medical debt. Why isn't it free? Where is the money, Donald Trump? Right? America is at war again. Donald Trump has started another useless, expensive war. While only 34% of teachers can afford to live off their salary alone. Said differently, a huge swath of teachers in America need second or third jobs in order to make ends meet. These people are supposed to be responsible for the next generation of thinkers, but that's not what this administration cares about, right? Donald Trump said that, and his whole administration, we're going to expose the Democrats, but guess who buried the Epstein files? Donald Trump and his administration. You said you were going to end war. Now we're in another regime change war that you started, and you had no idea what you were doing because Israel's got you by the balls. The United States of Israel. For a second, it was the United States of Saudi Arabia, but I don't know where they're at right now. I think they're balancing their business endeavors with the fact that their literal companions have been slaughtered for nothing other than a fucking random whim, right? So Trump has started another useless, expensive war while there's no infrastructure bill. Why don't you have an infrastructure? When's the last time something useful, beautiful has been built in America in multiple cities? It doesn't happen because all of your money is going to the military. And guess what? While your public education has been completely broken down, thanks to this administration that's starting another useless, expensive war, don't worry because Charlie Kirk's stupid face is flying in front of the fucking building. What the hell is that about, you fucking weirdos? Sorry for swearing so much. I said I wasn't going to swear as much to myself one time, but this is beyond the pale. This is gross. The guy said there was going to be tax breaks for the middle class. There's no tax cuts for the middle class. And yeah, you know, we got to get smarter on the left because you hear that and you're like, well, who cares about the fucking middle class? You should, because they're the only people keeping this economy alive. It is okay. It is okay to be able to live comfortably. I don't know why we're not all fighting for that more. It's good when people live comfortably and can have lives that can explore interests, that can have meaning. And so many lives were cut short by old, disgusting, grotesquely wealthy men. Some temper tantrum. So, we're done. We're done. Gloves off. We have everything to gain right now. This is the pits. But there's something liberating and freeing in that too. You have not mattered more. The thoughts that you have in your head have never been more consequential. The power that we have to build in front of us has never been greater. Because when things are broken, they're also broken open. And you know what? That's where we get the light in. I'm not hopeless, and I don't feel like things are hopeless. I think this is what happens when we give up power. I think it's what happens when we concede it, and I think it's what happens when we don't build it. I see our best and brightest, and yeah, I'm worried. Oh my God, I'm so worried about where we're headed. But if enough of the helpers can engender and garner up just a little more support by people like you and me. Some of you are the helpers. We stand to win, because even if we win incrementally, for us, that's people having dental care coverage, and that's people being able to pay off medical debt, and that's disability rights, man. When we win incrementally, we win big. But imagine if we went for big on purpose. Imagine if we took the biggest swings possible. Imagine if we could build coalitions with people that don't completely align with us, like the Democrats. Imagine if we didn't throw the Democrats or the reps, because they're fucking gangsters, hell, a lot of them, under the bus the second that they become Democrats, because we don't understand what a power map is. We can fucking take this, man. We could win it. I believe in us completely. And I believe in you completely. So no, I'm not going to do what all these other useless pundits do and all these so-called leftists, where they just talk about how shitty everything is and how fucked up the Democrats are. I don't care about that. That's a thing that I have to manage and that you have to manage, that we have to deal with. But yeah, good work isn't easy, but it's always worth it. And there's so much good work left to do. And there's so much goodness left in you. Let's see what happens when we bring those things together. So don't give up on art. Don't give up on belief. And don't give up on you. Don't give up on possibility, because, my God, this is the only thing that Black feminism truly teaches you. It's a wonderful thing, which is, yeah, I'm not weak enough to give in to nihilism and despair. And I'm not interested in people being punished so that I can be morally, or feel, it's not even that you are, feel morally superior based on arbitrary rules of Western imperialism. I think we can do better. I know we can. And I know we will. So I'll leave us there for this episode. You will be hearing me chirp all the time now. The thing that needed to click for me has finally clicked. I'm not going to be so hard on myself with my mother passing, but the time for output is here. A couple of things are, sometimes the only way to figure out where we're best suited, as in where the best place to start is by just casting out a bunch of lines. This is your time. And no, the things we say are not going to be popular, but don't they always end up that way? But what if we sought more? Remember, we have everything to gain. I love you all so much. Love you all so much. I can't wait for tomorrow's episode of Pop Woke. And yes, we'll be getting back into the shit on day 3. But honestly, there's nothing but good work ahead and hard times. And those are conditions that I think are enviable to most people elsewhere in the world. Somebody paid for me to be a little bit more comfortable in my life, even as I struggle. Somebody paid the bill for that. In the same way that Black Americans are footing the bill for all the freedoms we've enjoyed and now take for granted and seem to snub our nose at when they get lost. Not anymore. We still have to make our generational mark, and that's what's left in front of us. So I love you all very much. Thank you, Corey, for making us look good, sound good. And I can't wait for the next episode of Dark Woke. Mwah. Peace, y'all.